we've looked at this evidence. He existed. He was executed. The grave is empty. Let's look at one more thing, and the last fact, and this is what happened after that. Then the two from Emmaus. So these are two disciples. After this, Jesus was crucified. The grave was found empty. These disciples are walking along, and they're the ones who experienced Jesus in his reality, and many others also experienced. But Julian, just go for us. We'd sort of move on quickly here. What is the last fact that we could consider, and was Jesus resurrected or not?
Well, to keep in line with the East, we've called it early believers. And I think the point here is the very fact that the earliest believers, the people that were the closest to Jesus, came to a sudden and shocking belief that he was raised from the dead, despite every other presupposition they would have had. So if you think about that, Paul gives us a list in again, 1 Corinthians. He said that after his death, Jesus appeared to Peter, and then to the 12, and then to 500 people at one time, and then he appeared to James and to all the apostles, and then he also appeared to Paul. And if you just think about some of those people, if you think of Peter, somebody who has walked with Jesus all his life, and now his friend was crucified, and what would it take to convince a good friend that he was actually raised from the dead, and to convince him to that degree that he would later go on to die for it? Because that's the early church was not like church today, where you have a variety of reasons why you want to go to church. But the early church was a club with one membership fee, and that was to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. And as a matter of fact, when they tried to persecute Christians and they wanted to get them to recant, to say, no, I don't believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. And so many Christian martyrs stepped up and said, no, I firmly believe that, and I'm giving my life for that. This is the degree to which I believe that. And then if you again consider Paul, who hated Christians and who made it his life goal to eradicate this new sect, and what would it take, what transformative experience would it take for someone like him to come to such a strange, outlandish belief that somebody was raised from the dead? And then again, James, the brother of Jesus, who was a leader in the early church. I mean, most of us have brothers, and just imagine for a moment what it would take for you to be persuaded that your brother is the Son of God and that he died for your sins, and then he rose again. I mean, that takes some pretty good evidence. And so what we can say for certain is that the earliest believers, all very close to Jesus, came suddenly to that kind of belief, and they really held that belief. So some have said, maybe there was some hallucination going on. Maybe with one or two, but with 500 people at a time. And when Paul says, of these 500 people, some are still alive, he's implying, go and ask them if you don't believe me. So there's no such thing as a mass hallucination. That's always something personal. So we can rule that one out. Then others say, it is because, and this is a phenomenon that was known in the ancient time as well as now, when people lose someone who's dear to them, they often have visions of that person after he has died. They come to them in a dream, or they feel their presence in a strange way. So that is a fact that is known today, and it was known back then. This sometimes occurs. But the very point, and that's what people often miss, if you have an experience like that, it just really confirms that that person is dead. It doesn't mean at all that that person is now raised from the dead and living forever, right? So we can rule those things out. And even though, again, we can't prove miracles are one-off events in history. Caesar crossed the Rubicon once, that happened once, and you can't replicate that moment in time. And in the same way, if Jesus was raised, he was raised once, and we can't prove it. But what we can show is that it left some traces behind, and one of the strongest tracks that it left behind is the fact that even his brother, who in Jesus' lifetime wanted to declare him insane and wanted to have him, put in the nut house, and then afterwards came to believe that he was actually the Messiah and that he's raised from the dead. What would it take? What kind of transformative experience must these people have had? And again, you see the gospel accounts; those are physical experiences. It's not just a dream or a vision. There's a Jesus who eats with them, who has loaves and fish with them on the beach. There's a Jesus who allows them to put their fingers in his wounds to see that it's really him. So they really came to that belief shockingly, surprisingly, and immediately came to the belief that Jesus really was raised from the dead in bodily form. And that is, again, I read a Gary Habermas article on this. He looked at sort of recent trends in scholarship, and the recent trend, even from the most skeptic of all scholars, is to say and to affirm the resurrection experiences were bodily experiences. Those weren't just imaginations or that sort. So that again is something we can say absolutely certain. The majority of scholars affirm it, and it makes perfect sense to think if somebody goes on laying their life down for the belief that Jesus was raised from the dead, they must have had some kind of experience. I mean, it's true that people die for all sorts of things, but that's different. Yeah, if I now die for some kind of ideology, that's a different case as affirming with my life that my little brother or my big brother is the Lord of all the earth. So, yeah, it's just very clear and overwhelming. And this is, I think, the fourth trace that the resurrection left behind: a group of bewildered disciples that didn't know what had just happened to them, and they came to a sudden belief that Jesus was raised in bodily form from the dead.